Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2020 suspense thriller Unhinged. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I want to give a very special shout out to a longtime supporter of my channel, Mega Pork Chop Express, for requesting this review. He's pretty much been here since the beginning. I honestly remember him supporting my previous channels, or at least one or two of them before this one. So he's been here for the long haul, and I wanted to definitely show my appreciation. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you'd like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your requests as soon as I possibly can. Now, Unhinged, it was actually, I believe, the first film to get a major wide theatrical release after the lockdown in 2020. And it's a film that got some middling reviews from critics when it came out, but it has a decent fan base, especially in the horror community. And I went into this with pretty low expectations, and let's just say my bar wasn't that high, and I honestly wasn't a huge fan of this film. I don't think it was absolutely awful. I don't think it was terrible. I don't think it was a bad movie. Initially, I thought it was because I was disappointed by the film, but now it's just more of a film that I consider to be more forgettable and below average than just outright bad. I do feel that there are things about it, though, that suck, and I will discuss those soon enough and why I feel that way. But it was just a film that I thought was a bit of a letdown. I feel that there was some potential here with the premise and the concept. I think there are some good things to like about the movie, and one of them is definitely Russell Crowe as the crazy manic psycho who is stalking and going after this family. But other than Russell Crowe and maybe like one or two lines of dialogue and a few elements here and there, this film is mostly forgettable, and it's mostly been there, done that, dime a dozen stuff when it comes to a suspense thriller. It's directed by Derrick Borte, and before this, he did a dark comedy, which was his directorial debut, called The Joneses with David Duchovny, which is probably his most well-received film critically. And he did other stuff before this, like some movie you've never heard of called American Dreamer or American Dreamers, and another film called Haters, but spelled with an H and an 8 and an R and a 7, that kind of movie. And the direction, it was there. It wasn't particularly great, but it wasn't also something that was a total eyesore. It wasn't completely incompetent. It wasn't incredible either, though. Like, it was just the kind of direction that you see quite often in a slew of low budget thrillers dealing with a man on the edge, or a film where some family is getting terrorized by some kind of psycho. There's nothing that particularly stand out about the direction in this. It was pretty even keeled, but also at the same time it was very average. It was very mid tier directing when it comes to the chase sequences, when it comes to the various different sequences involving characters in turmoil, or scenes that are focused on the killer or the psycho doing his thing. The direction is competent, but it's not anything more than that. And I feel maybe a little bit better director, maybe a little bit more accomplished director would have been able to add more to this film and would have made it better, because there's so much about the movie that's either dumb or just so generic that if you had a director who actually had some kind of unique vision or unique take on things, or somebody who was actually able to really do something cool and different with the visuals, then I think that definitely would have enhanced the overall film. But what you have here is just middle of the road type of direction in terms of the way that shots are presented, in terms of the way that techniques are employed, uh, how certain types of shots are utilized, how pans and zooms and establishing shots and all this other stuff is put together. It's the kind of directing that you've seen dozens or countless of times or hundreds of times by so many other different filmmakers. It really felt like it was the type of job that you could just swap any name that isn't that well known, any kind of lesser known indie filmmaker, and just swap their names out, and you wouldn't really be able to tell the difference at all. Now, the script by Carl Ellsworth, on the other hand, who is actually a pretty good writer. I mean, this is the guy who wrote the script for Red Eye, Disturbia, Last House on the Left, but he also wrote the screenplay for the Red Dawn remake, which is the last film that he wrote, which that's not a good sign because that film is absolute trash. And I mean, that film is really bad, and the script was really bad. So that's not a good sign that the last good film that he did was not even his most recent film in terms of his writing. So it kind of shows that he's on a bit of a decline. And honestly, I feel Unhinged is in the same boat. This script is such a letdown. First off, it makes a really fatal mistake, in my opinion, by opening up the film the way that it does. It takes away any intrigue, it takes away any mystery involving the character of Tom Cooper, where it just shows right off the bat that he's a psycho. He killed his family, burned his house down, and now he's on the run. And so when he starts focusing on this different family in what seems like just a bit of road rage, because of the fact that there's no mystery and there's no intrigue, there's not really that much suspense, because you already know that this guy is off his rocker, you already know what he's capable of, you already know what he did. And so when he starts escalating things in terms of going after this mother and her family, it doesn't come across as a stretch. It doesn't come across as something that's that surprising either. And I think there is something to be said about it not coming across like a stretch, like it's coming out of nowhere. But at the same time, I think coming out of nowhere is better for this kind of film, because then it really jars you, and then it pulls you in, and then you're wondering what this guy's deal is. And then throughout the film, they kind of provide you a little bit of more information about what is going on with this guy. But instead, they just give it away early. And while it does have some effectiveness in terms of its shocking brutality, that is very fleeting. So I think that was not necessarily the right choice when it comes to the opening of the film. Also, I think the screenwriter did a really bad job in terms of writing the protagonist. The antagonist has its issues because of how his true nature is revealed way too early on in the film, so there's no real mystery. But the protagonist has an equal problem that is honestly worse. Like, it's not equal. Like I said, it's equal, but I think it's an unequal problem. And it deals with the character of Rachel, and the way that she's written, she comes across as very unlikable. So you have your protagonist who's being terrorized by Tom Cooper, this psycho, and you're supposed to be sympathetic towards her and root for her, but you don't because of the way that she's written. And what do I mean by that? Well, when she first encounters Tom Cooper in his truck. Yes, she's having a bad day. She woke up late, is in a rush to take her son to school. This leads to her losing her best client for her personal hairdressing job that she has, where she's an at-home hairdresser, because she used to have a salon, but then she lost it, and now she lost her best client because she wasn't going to be able to make it on time for the appointment. And she's also dealing with a divorce. So there's a lot of things that she's going through, but the way that she's written, she just comes across as way too bitchy, especially when it comes to her initial confrontation with Tom Cooper. Like, Tom, yeah, he's in a daze and he's not moving his truck, and she honks the horn at him, but she honks the horn at him way too aggressively. And when he mentions the courtesy tap, he's not really in the wrong. And the way that she reacts after he's trying to make things right is just, it's very bitchy, and really makes it hard for you to be on her side, where she's just like, yeah, yeah, sure, whatever, when it comes to trying to apologize. And she she even says things like, well, I don't have to apologize for anything. uh she just comes across as way too stubborn, to the point where you don't necessarily sympathize with her. And I think that's a serious problem, because she is in a lot of ways the focus of the film for the rest of the movie, other than the scenes that focus on Tom Cooper. So I think they should have dialed it. I mean, I don't know why I keep going that route when it comes to discussing these films. I think I'm used to there being multiple writers for a lot of films that I've been doing, because normally that is the case. But the writer, he he really should have dialed things back when it comes to her stubbornness and her personality. Yes, you can make it appear as if she's reacting harshly, but you can do that in a way that is a lot more effective and still makes the character sympathetic, and you understand why they're reacting the way that they are reacting. Also, I don't really feel like there was any point where she really had this light bulb moment where she realized that she was in the wrong. And if there was something like that, it wasn't as clear. It was a little more vague. I think there was something a little bit near the end of the movie where she could go into a bit of a rage, but then she decides not to. And I think that's supposed to be a bit of character development for her, but it's so brief and it's so fleeting that it doesn't really leave that much of an impact. So that's what I mean. I really do feel that this character is not written very well in terms of making the audience uh, feel for her, let alone find her to be endearing enough so that the film has enough genuine tension and suspense. The son is just kind of there in terms of how he's written. I will give the writer credit for how he writes Flynn, in terms of Flynn having his head on his shoulders, and being the one to kind of go against his mom and the way that she's acting, and sort of be a voice of reason. But he's not really that useful other than moments like that, because even in the finale, when he is with his mom, and Rachel has set up something to corner Tom, he's pretty much useless because he's a kid, so there's only so much that he can do. um there's some other characters as well in the family. There's this character named Fred, who's Rachel's brother, who lives with Rachel and her son Kyle. There's this friend and divorce lawyer named Andy, who's a friend of Rachel's. You've got Fred's fiance, Mary, who also lives with Fred, and Rachel and her son. And the stuff involving those characters is also not really the best. I would say the stuff involving the divorce lawyer is probably the most well written parts of the supporting cast. This script really suffers from a case of the stupids. Like, this is such an illogical, just incredibly idiotic script at times that it really makes it hard for me to get into the film. And what do I mean by that? Well, after Tom Cooper goes on his rampage and picks Rachel as his next target, he gets her phone and he's easily able to access her contacts and everything on her phone because she didn't even bother to put any sort of password on it or Face ID or fingerprint ID. This wasn't something that was science fiction at this time. This is 2020. It's pretty common, more often than not, for people to have some sort of security on their phone. But no, conveniently, there is no security to speak of. So Tom is able to access all her contacts and start forcing her to pick people that are going to die next, and so on and so forth. He also was able to use the phone to track her by connecting it with the tablet that he hides in her car, but she doesn't figure out where the tablet is until way later in the film. And to me, I would think that if you are paranoid, understandably so, that this psycho is stalking you and has chosen you as a target, you would be looking through your car, especially when you know that he already has your phone. You would be looking through your car to see, did he plan anything? Did he put anything in there? Uh, you would also be looking for your tablet because you don't have your phone anymore. But she doesn't look for. She looks for the tablet, but she just stops looking after a certain point. Like, she just doesn't find it right away and just quits, which is dumb. And it's even dumber because her son finds the tablet really easily later on in the film. So you have that, and then you have the whole fact that, I don't know, she never switches vehicles. You know that this guy is stalking you. You know that he has a idea, well, not really an idea. You know that he knows what car you're driving. So he knows what car you're driving. And he knows exactly who you are. He knows where you live. He knows your family. He knows all of these things because he has your phone that you conveniently didn't put a lock on. So I would think that one of the first things that you would do, other than go to your local phone carrier, which I'll get to that soon, is get a new car. It's like the writer never even heard of rent-a-car. Like, you didn't even know that was a thing. And what makes it all the more annoying is that she does eventually get this later on in the finale where she switches cars. And Tom even switches cars at one point. So it's like the writer knows that switching cars is something that is valid and something that is not only reasonable, but something that more than likely is a likely obvious thing to do in this kind of scenario, but then just comes across it way too late. And speaking of likely things and obvious things that this screenwriter misses, she never tries to go to the police earlier, and she also doesn't go to her phone provider to track her phone. Like, this guy, he's out in the open, he's killing people in diners. People have filmed the guy with their phones. He's already killed a bunch of people in his house and burned it down earlier. This guy is on a killing spree, and he's out in the open, and he has this woman's phone, and she never tries to do anything in order to find her phone and find this guy. And the reason why that doesn't happen is because then the movie would be over. The movie would be over like 25 minutes in, because all of a sudden she would go to the police and have them track the phone, or she would go to her phone provider and have them track the phone, then call the police, and then the cops would find his ass before he even did anything. Probably before he even killed the guy at the diner, they would have found his ass, because he is already stalking her, he's already trying to get her, and he's already took her phone. So she knows that he already has her phone, so at that point, he's got bad intentions. And he's had bad intentions in this entire time. And he's already established himself as a threat. And he's threatened her and her family. So he's already done things that could get the police involved. So it's not one of those things where, oh, we got to wait till he does something. Like, he's already made threats. So they could have easily found his ass. But no, that doesn't happen. And it's just like the script just doubles down on the dumbness as it goes on further. You have the scene with Rachel's brother, Fred, and this is the sequence when Tom has headed over to Rachel's house, and he is essentially taken Fred's fiance, Mary, hostage. And Fred, he knows that there's somebody who's broken into the house, and he knows that someone's there, which is why he grabs a knife in the first place, to defend himself. And so he goes into this room, he's got the knife ready, and then Tom reveals himself. And he's out in the open, he's got Mary, and Fred is like 2 feet away from his face, and Tom is just monologuing. He's just ranting like a madman, just completely out of it. And Fred is just standing there with a knife in his hand and is just listening to this guy ramble on. I don't know about you. If I was in that situation and I knew the guy was not there and he was just rambling on and just not even in the same zip code, I would have taken that knife and I would have stabbed him multiple times in the face, in the neck, in the eye, everywhere I possibly could, because this guy clearly is not focused on anything other than his rambles. Like, he's completely off the reservation at this point. So I would have stabbed his ass. He's 2 feet away. It's not like Fred was like really far away at this point. They were like almost this close to one another. And so he easily could have stabbed him and saved himself and saved his fiance. But instead what happens is he stands there like a dumbass with his thumb up his fucking behind, and then Tom grabs his fiance and shoves his fiance into the knife that Fred is holding, killing his fiance, using Fred and Fred's knife as a weapon to kill her. That it was so avoidable. It was, I could not believe what I was seeing. I was like, that is so unbelievably stupid. So the guy just sits there. I mean, just doesn't sit there. He just stands there and just does nothing. Like, he's just completely frozen. And I get it. Some people are saying, oh, well, he's scared, he's intimidated. Whatever. You're in fight or flight mode. You're in survival mode. Like, a lot of times it's just one of those things where, yeah, sometimes you can be frozen in fear, but there's also a lot of other times where you just go for it. And if he went for it and he got stopped, and Tom took the knife away and then stabbed her and said that was a mistake, that would be fine. But instead, it's Fred's stupidity that kills his fiance. And then that scene gets even more idiotic, because then there's the cops that arrive later, and there's only one cop that shows up. Like, are you kidding me? Only one cop shows up after it's well aware that this guy is on a killing spree? There's only one cop? Give me a fucking break. So yeah, one cop shows up like it's a routine crime call, and of course the guy escapes, and he only gets like one shot put into him. And I get it. It's all set up this way because we wouldn't have a film otherwise. But if that is the case, that's not a good script. You need to do better than that. And then you get to the climax and the finale where Rachel uses her smarts to corner Tom and to get him isolated so she can take him out and save her son and stop this reign of terror. And she initially has the right idea by barreling a car into him and into the van that he's in, and incapacitating him and taking him by surprise. But then the weapon that she chooses to take him out, I swear to God, it was a fucking selfie stick. And I'm like, a selfie stick? What are you gonna do with that thing? Stick it up his ass? Like, what the fuck? Like a selfie stick? That wasn't ever gonna do anything. And so of course Tom overpowers her really quickly, takes the selfie stick out of her hands, and just completely pimp slaps her around. And then she has this panic room thing that was also just not really that well written. And eventually she is able to get the upper hand against Tom, and messes him up, and then takes the candy cane scissors that she had in her pocket and stabs him in the eye. And then you have admittedly a pretty good one liner. Here's your courtesy tap, motherfucker. Like, I like that. That was a good line. I just wish it was in a much better movie. And then she kills Tom, she saves her son, and she's out on the road again, and it looks like somebody like cuts her off or pulls in front of her in traffic, and she's about ready to honk the horn again, but then she hesitates as if she's learned a lesson, and then the movie ends. That's basically what you get with the script. Like, you get some stuff with Tom Cooper and him talking about how uh he feels like there's a lot of married men who are just screwed over by their wives and by the divorce lawyers, and it definitely does seem like the screenplay is trying to do some falling down stuff, but it just does it in a way that's just a total fail, or it just comes across as very forced in terms of the social commentary. And I'll give the story this: it's not very long. It doesn't overstay its welcome in that regard, but it's just so dumb and it's so poorly conceived the majority of the time. And you have such a weak protagonist that I don't really care for and I don't really root for. And you have a somewhat intimidating antagonist in Tom Cooper, but the his aspect of the script isn't as well done because they gave away too much way too early. So what you have is just a very middling meh thriller. That's really what you get with Unhinged, story wise, and honestly with the film as a whole. And it's too bad because there is some potential here. The simple, straightforward plot of a man on the edge who snapped, going after this family because of road rage, like that is something that I feel could have worked. It just needed to be a lot more clever and a lot less stupid. And it just feels like a waste, especially when it comes to Russell Crowe's performance as Tom Cooper. Uh, he really is channeling John Goodman in The Big Lebowski, especially that whole scene where he's like, "This is what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass." You know, that he's just smashing the car with the golf club. Like that is really the type of manic performance you get from Russell Crowe in this, and I think it works. And there are some moments with his performance where you can see a bit of charm. You can kind of see a guy, you could see a little bit of goodness in him. Kind of similar to what happened with Michael Douglas in Falling Down, where it's just a man who is just snapped. He's been through too much, and he's just completely lost it. And I wish that there was more to this performance, and there's more to this character. There's more that Russell Crowe could work with, but he didn't have that much. Caren Pistorius, I mean, I'm not going to be too harsh on her performance. She did a good job playing a character that you didn't like, but I don't really think that was necessarily the best approach for the film. So I think that she's not necessarily given the best potential script or story to work with or dialogue. But she does say that one-liner really well, and I did buy her when it comes to her trying to actually do some physical stuff, and when she was using her smarts, but it was just a very uneven performance because of the fact that it was just a very uneven character. Gabriel Bateman was fine as the kid, as Rachel's son Kyle. Jimmi Simpson, there's not really a whole lot to say. He was in it for like 5 minutes, but he did some all right work. Same thing goes for Austin P. McKenzie as Fred, or Julian Joyner as Mary. But definitely the main selling factor, and the only reason to even watch this film once, is really for Russell Crowe's performance as the mentally unstable Tom Cooper. The cinematography by Brendan Galvin is not really that good. It's just kind of there like a whole uh, good chunk of the film. Same thing goes for the editing by Steve Merkovich, Michael McCusker, and Tim Merkovich. The music by David Buckley. This score was really bad. This score did this film no favors. Like, this score sounded like something from Creative Commons. That's really what it sounded like. And just the music in general was just not good for this film. I mean, the film ends with a really shitty cover of Don't Fear the Reaper. So yeah, that's definitely one aspect of the film that really drops the ball. And the movie's like 93 minutes, but I didn't feel it was that fast paced. At least it wasn't as fast paced as it could have been, because I just wasn't as invested in the story or the characters as much because of how things were written. And yeah, it's not a film that makes me unhinged in terms of being angry and upset at it because of its wasted potential, but it is a film that at the end of the day that I really don't have a desire to ever see again. And I think there are a lot better thrillers out there dealing with men on the edge, like Falling Down with Michael Douglas, or other films involving people being terrorized by strangers, like Breakdown with Kurt Russell, or honestly, Bad Day on the Block, Under Pressure with Charlie Sheen. Like, a lot of people say this film is enjoyable and it's fun because of Russell Crowe, and I guess I can kind of get that because Russell Crowe is good in this, but I don't think he's good enough to the point where he saves the film and makes it anything other than below average. But Charlie Sheen is just as enjoyable playing a psycho fireman in A Bad Day on the Block, if you ask me. And I think there's just a better written script, and it has a better family that I actually connect with and kind of root for. And that film gets mostly nothing but crap from people and critics. But honestly, I think that's a much better version of the kind of film that Unhinged is trying to be. But that's just me personally. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on Unhinged. I know it's kind of a long review, but I was very on the fence about the film, very just conflicted on it. And whenever that happens, it makes for kind of a little bit longer review because I'm trying to just get my thoughts in order. But anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.